Peace and blessings, family. This is your brother, asarimhotep, with the Martin Delaney Center for Egyptology and maduindelapress.com. Today, we have a very, very special guest with us, uh, somebody who has supported the channel and is also a part of our Patreon group. But you sometimes you enter these spaces and you just don't know the genius that is, among you until sometime later. So, we kind of accidentally discovered this brother and came to find out he's a phenomenal young man and into STEM and Africana studies. And we're just going to dive in a little bit more about his life and what he does and in the industry he belongs to and how he's contributing in major ways to the sciences. And so we have with us Olaoluwa, if I'm even saying that correct, Olaoluwa or Olaoluwa, I should say, Falade, and he'll correct me when he comes on. I'm used to calling him by another name. So, but we have Mr. Falade with us, and we are going to get it in when we return. Welcome to the Mbongi. Again, we are here with a very, very powerful guest, part of our continued and ongoing series of bringing you Black scientists and artists who are making major moves and contributions to the forward flow of human history. And so, many of you know I am one of the co-founders of Black Science Month that we celebrate in October. And, and how we do on this channel, we just don't celebrate, Black achievement and Black culture and interest 1 month out of the year. It's an ongoing yearly thing. So by the time we get to Black History Month or Black Science Month, we're really kind of summarizing throughout the year what we've learned. And so, in that continuation and ongoing conversation, we have Mr. Falade with us today. But before I get into that, I just want to remind everyone that on February the 18th, actually February the 18th through the 28th, we will be in Egypt and for the Returning to the Source conference and tour, uh, headed by our good brother Taki Smith, who, excuse me, Taki Smith, Taki Grant, who is the founder of Aket Tours, who does these yearly tours in Egypt. And also, he is the primary producer of the Hoppy film, um, and the role of economics in the building of civilization. And so it's going to be a very powerful gathering. I hear that there's a lot of people who have registered and will be, I think, close to 100 folks will be going to this particular conference. And part of the reason why, of course, is the ancient Egyptians themselves and the monuments and artwork and other things that they have left, you know, to posterity. but also these living legends who will be there, which include Professor James Small, Dr. Leonard Jeffries, Anthony Browder, Dr. Solange Ashby, Dr. Rosalind Jeffries, Dr. Wade Nobles and his wife, Dr. Vera Nobles, Brother Infudishi Jehuti Mess, and Dr. Theophilo Binga, as well as your brother Asar Imhotep. And so I think it's on the 25th and the 26th is the actual conference, which will be in Aswan. And it is going to be a very, very powerful event. So, not knowing how your funds is given the short time span, but if you just got that money to spare right now and you want to go to the conference, hit up akettours.com, and you can, if you can't see the link at the bottom of the flyer, then hopefully you can see that. It's akettours.com. And so you can visit that and visit the hoppyfilm.com website to find out more about the documentary film, which these people who I mentioned earlier, these scholars and a whole lot more are in the film. And yes, I am in the film as well. And so, speaking of the film, while I am there in Egypt, I will be also filming for the documentary that I am producing called Chiena Into. And the objective of Chiena Into is to be a series of documentaries in which we highlight the the connections and the interconnections and correspondences in terms of language, in terms of culture, in terms of archaeology, between ancient Egypt, Meroe, Nubia, and the rest of so-called sub-Saharan Africa. And so when we talk about Egypt a lot, is usually within the context of Near Eastern studies. And so with the creation of the Martin Delany Center for Egyptology, we have reoriented the studies along the entire Nile River uh, plain or whatnot. So going all the way down into the Great Lakes, all the way to ancient Egypt. So that is our center of that's our focus when we're doing the research that we're doing. So it's from the Great Lakes region all the way up. Of course, we expand into just all of Africa, but we're including ancient Egyptian and Meroitic studies and what we call Nile River studies. Uh, in a similar way in which they do near quote unquote Eastern studies. So with that is part of that that process, this documentary is included within that sphere. So we have a of course the intellectual scholarly arm, and so we have the publication arm. And so the first publication is the book that I wrote, Chiluba Maweja, Yoruba Orisha, and Ancient Egyptian Ankh, an exploratory etymological study. And so the whole field is called Into Com, and of course, it's Nile River Studies, Martin Delany Center for Egyptology. And so, this will kind of be a testament to the kind of scholarship that is to come. And so, we want to not only just do the academic work in terms of text, we want to have something, for the people in general that they can digest more readily, and hopefully inspire them to read the supporting documents that many scholars have written over time. And so if you want to contribute to the the first phase of the Chiena Into film, subtitled Ancient Egypt and the Into Universe, you can do so in many ways. And one way which you can do that is to become a Patreon member at patreon.com/asarimhotep, or you can go to the Chiena Into film.com website and make a donation. So that will be the hub to find out more information about the film, what is going on. There'll be some blog articles in the near future, and I'll be sharing photos and videos there as well. So we got a long road ahead of us, but um, with your support, we make that road a bit smoother as we bring this information forward to the people. So, with that said, and without further ado, oh, before I go, in February the 15th and the 16th, 2022, there will be an online conference titled West Africa and Beyond Ancient Nubian and Egyptian Interconnections with the Niger Valley and the Atlantic World. Uh, you can go to westafricaandbeyond.com to uh, register and to find out more. I will be presenting at this conference, as well as individuals like Omen Digi out of Cameroon. Dr. Charles S. Finch, I think, will be presenting there. Professor James Smalls, and a number of African, especially Francophone speaking African scholars from, the University of Dakar in Senegal, West Africa, and just a whole, I'll just list a few of them. So we talked about Dr. Salu, uh, who's going to be speaking on the Abdul Salu, who's going to be speaking on the connections linguistically between the Yoruba language and that of ancient Egyptian. And we have Dr. Sharmaka Keita, who's a biological anthropologist. We're going to have Dr. Um, Muhammadu Nisir Sar from Sheikh Anta Diop University, who's going to be talking about uh, the mounds, the connections between West African mounds and like the mounds in the Sudan and pyramid complexes in ancient Egypt. Dr. Ives Victor Ngono, who's an Egyptologist, will be expanding the conversation to deal with uh, Thailand. So he argues that there's a connection between ancient Kemet and Thailand in history, and so he's an Egyptologist, and he did his dissertation on these connections, and so he'll be discussing that. Dr. Omen Digi, of course, the connections between the Bassa of Cameroon and many others. And Dr. Andrew Jaggs will also be there, who also he did his PhD on connections between the Yoruba and the ancient Egyptians. And so, of course, Dr. Jahi Issa, Dr. Salam Faraji. There's two PhD candidates, Anissa Malvoising and Lamine Baji. Um, Brother Reginald Mabry will also be there. You know him from the Sonnetter. And of course, I think I've named everyone that's going to be a part of that conversation. So, check out westafricabeyond.org to find out more information and to register. So each day is $35. So just know that up front. Make sure that you support. They're putting in a lot of work to bring these top-notch scholars together to discuss these inter-African connections. So, with that said, and without further ado, I want to introduce our special guest, Olaoluwa Falade, and he's going to correct me on how to properly pronounce his first name before I blow up, on live on this camera. But Mr. Falade is a mechanical engineer. His interests are on the instantaneous optimal control, numerical optimization algorithms in biomechanics, specifically in population dynamics. He is the author of Ojak Bogbo and co-author of Parameter Identification in Ecological Systems via Discontinuous and Singular Control Regimes, both peer-reviewed journal articles, and you know, by the time we post this, I hope to have the direct links to the journal articles where hopefully you can get access to these two works. And so, again, without further ado, I'd like to welcome Mr. Falade to the Bongi. How are you today, sir?
I'm fine. Thank you, Mr. Asar. It's a pleasure being on your show, and I like the work you're doing on Egyptology and linking ancient Egypt to Africa.
Mhm.
It's amazing.
I
Thank you for
appreciate it.
having me. Yeah.
You're welcome. Thank you for being here. I appreciate and understand the value of people's time. And so the fact that you would, share uh, some time away from, family or other research and whatever work you got going on to have a conversation with with me and the rest of the Mbongi is truly an honor and a pleasure. So thank you again for coming on and
And thank you
sharing your
too.
wisdom. I
Yeah, thank you
appreciate
too.
it.
Yeah.
Well, given that, it's not your first time literally on the program, you've come on a couple of times in regards to our open conversations. But in terms of a formal introduction to the Mbongi. And so, with that, I would like to start off just a little bit about yourself. So, where are you from? And, where did you go to school? And how did you get interested in the the particular science field that you are find yourself in today?
Okay. Um, so my name is Joseph
Mhm,
Olaoluwa Falade, and Joseph is my English name.
mhm.
Olaoluwa Falade is what my friends and acquaintances call me, and since everyone here is my friend, you all can call me Ola.
Mhm,
Falade, that's my last name. It means, or the full name is Ifalade, and that basically means Ifa has the crown.
mhm,
And you find that name in Nigeria amongst people from families from Ife, from the priestly class of Ife and royal families from Oyo. So when they mix together, you usually see the name Falade. So
mhm,
I'm a Nigerian. I was born in Nigeria. I grew up mostly in northern Nigeria, amongst not amongst Yoruba people, but amongst Hausa, Fulani, and the rest. So I
mhm,
can speak a little bit of everything, but
mhm.
I'm struggling. But yeah, so yeah, I'm a Nigerian, and I studied at Midwestern State University.
Mm,
I got so I guess I should start from the beginning. My parents are all in the science field. My dad is a
mm,
civil engineer. My
mm,
mom is a radiographer, or a radiologist. That's what they call it in America.
mhm,
My brother is a mechanical engineer. My sister is a computer engineer,
mhm,
and I'm the last born. Uh, we are three in our family, and I'm also a mechanical engineer. And I actually started my education at the Federal University of Technology at Mina, and that's in Niger State. That's in Nigeria.
mhm,
And I got wind of studying abroad. Like growing up, I've always wanted to come to America. Um, Hollywood is is a magnet. Like I won't say propaganda, but
mhm.
the way Hollywood sells America is
Mhm.
so welcoming that so me and my dad like coming studying abroad. My dad wanted me to try the United Kingdom because he
Mm,
studied in the United Kingdom. He studied at Manchester University.
mm,
So he didn't like. He felt Americans were. I don't know what word to use, but like a little bit rough on the edge. So he
Yeah.
wanted me to go to the United Kingdom, but I was like, no, I love America. And yeah, so I had some friends that were in America, and they told me about different schools. I applied to Midwestern State University. I got
Mm,
admission. I got a scholarship. I had to take the SAT, prove that I can speak English, even though I can't speak English. So,
mhm,
but they made me take that exam, but
mhm.
passed everything. And then I came to the United States and found myself studying mechanical engineering and found myself where I am now. Yeah.
Uh,
So that's like a short summary.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. So that got to
Yeah.
be, yeah. I wish I'd have knew you back then. Uh, so you be like the United States. I be like, hold up, let me just tell you about some things before you
Yeah.
get here. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, that speaks to the power of media,
Exactly.
and even in the opposite direction, and actually, while we're joking about it, this is the the main reason why I want to do the documentary film, and
Yes.
to because of the power of the media and how
Yes.
it
Yes.
shapes
Like
perception.
online, you usually see things about people coming into Egypt.
Yeah.
Everywhere, all the popular YouTube stations that have 160,000 views,
Yeah.
200,000 views, all talk about some Egypt that is not African. So
Yeah.
you are the only one that I see. And because I'm a scientist,
Mhm,
I appreciate analytical and numerical research. And
mhm,
you are a linguistic, so you won't see, you know, I guess from people's definition of math, you're not going to see actual math, but what
mhm,
he does is math. Those when he shows you those diagrams and everything. I am not a linguistics
mhm,
person, but I'm a scientist, so I can follow the science. I can follow the math,
mhm,
and it is beautiful. That's what I'm gonna say. So we need to get that documentary out there, everybody, for
mhm.
real. We need to have documentaries that focus on Africa,
Indeed.
especially in relation to Egypt.
Especially, I appreciate it. And I was just having a conversation last night with Dr. Shamarka Keita, who's a biological anthropologist.
Okay.
And I was trying to help him understand, because he does a lot of collaborative work with a historian and linguist, Dr. Christopher Ehret, who's out
Okay.
at UCLA in California. And I have my issues with Christopher Ehret and his school, more so the
Okay.
Green, what we call the Greenberg School, and their categorization methods. And in that conversation, we every time we speak, we somehow get on that subject, and we start debating. But I was trying to tell him that linguistics is mathematics, and so because we get into these conversations about method, and and so we understand certain things in the sciences, in scientific method, and I'm like, well, certain things in science, while we can kind of get close to it, we got to understand them first as different things, because science requires kind of physical experimentation and or observations in these different ways. But linguistics is mathematics, and mathematics is a branch of logic, and so you got to understand logical uh methods in terms. So you have the scientific method, and then we have the logical method, and this is what this all the only part of linguistics that really falls under science is phonetics, because it's actual sound, is science of
Mm,
acoustics,
true,
and
true,
of
true,
course
true.
the physical body. So
Yes, yes, true.
so and to a certain extent, like when you're dealing with uh language in terms of the psychological factors in relation to the brain. So I'm a computer scientist, so linguistics is part of computer science, especially when you're diving into AI,
Mm-hmm.
because of course we're trying to replicate human uh, functioning in a synthetic and
Mhm.
computer environment.
Mhm.
So it's just funny that you say that in terms of the mathematics because I don't even know if I have this book over here, and I probably don't. Oh, well, it's somewhere. Nope, it's not over there. Where would I have that text? Um, nope, nope. I have my books just like everywhere in the universe, so it will it'll pop up somewhere. But like I have several books on the relationship between linguistics and mathematics, and even the mathematics of linguistics. But it's probably in one of my bags somewhere. So anyway, uh, so so now the question becomes, how did you get into? Why did you choose that field? You know, to get
Mm.
into what piqued your interest? Is this something that you saw yourself getting into when you were very young, or did you just have some conversations like after high school and someone was like, you may want to consider this? Da da da. How did it all come into be?
Um, so growing up, I've always liked making stuff.
Mm,
And even when I didn't have the materials to make stuff, like my mom and my siblings always make fun of me, even up till today. Like when I was a kid, I run around and they call this they I play a game called they call it Kish Kish. And
yes,
all
yes.
I do, yeah, all I
Okay.
do is I imagine stuff, right? So I imagine stuff and they just see me going around playing somewhere and imagining doing the thing, and I make weird noises like like trying imagining myself creating something and putting them together.
uh,
So I've always had that feeling, and there was a time when I was having a drive with my dad. I told him I wanted to be an astronaut, and he laughed at me because we were in Africa, and um, even in America, we don't really do anything in space, at least
uh,
as at now, other than um, s- space to Earth, really satellites, putting satellites in
mm,
space and all of that good stuff. But we only went to the moon once. The UK went to the did they ever go to the moon? No, they did not. Um, but yeah, so it's like, it sounded like a fantasy. And my dad started telling me, hey, we don't really have astronauts in Nigeria, but you can make the things that the astronauts need.
mm,
And that's what pushed me in that direction. And then
mm,
the moment I graduated high school, so my dad, as a civil engineer, he worked for the National Board for Technical Education. And what they did was they designed curriculums for
mhm,
technical education. So so they had like a company in the United Kingdom, Bonham Electronics, and they
okay.
visited Nigeria for uh for a training course.
Mm,
And this was something for undergraduates and postgraduates. So my dad stuck me in there, and basically that's when I got my first training in engineering, um, system controls, and how to make a printed circuit board. So this, if you all can see this, this was my first printed circuit board. And up here you see my name, Falade.
hmm,
Yeah, so I made my first printed circuit board. This is a doorbell. So if you put the transistors, capacitors, and everything, and you cover it up, you have a doorbell. So yeah, so that's what pushed me in from high school, and that's when I knew I knew what I needed to do to contribute to the whole lack of space technology, I guess, in Africa.
mm. Like you remind me, like I haven't gotten to that level like I could put the parts together and stuff to that nature. So like one of the things that I was looking at is, of course, seeing if we can raise funds to find those kits
Okay,
that,
yes.
so like they sell these, kind of starter kits, you know, uh I don't know if it shows up.
A little bit,
Uh,
but I know what you're holding.
yeah,
Yeah, I think the first thing you had was a motion sensor, right?
correct.
Yes, I've used
So,
that. I've used that equipment before. I've used that
and
equipment before.
breadboards and
Yes, yes,
learning
yes,
how to make gates, uh
yes.
and all that other kind of stuff. Like
Yeah.
that's the stuff that we like to, or at least I like to dabble in. But getting these kind of kits to African Black youth, to get them into understanding mechanics and circuitry and
Yes.
stuff like that. That's
Very important. Very
very
important.
important for,
Yeah.
and the skills go beyond the just computer development and science and stuff to that nature. As I discuss, you know, at least for me, because I'm on the more of the software side, um, doing in linguistics and then trying to build robots and AI technology, to try to mimic human activity. But so recapping, you get you have these wild imaginations, uh and wanting to be an astronaut and recreate an African Star Trek.
Yes,
uh
sir.
and your dad says, you may want to consider this, at least build the machines in which the astronauts use. And so you got sent to a program, or I'm sorry, was it a like a conference, or was it like a program? What was the name of it again?
It was an actual program. So it was
Okay.
organized by the um Electrical and Electronics Engineering Society of Nigeria. I've forgotten what they're
Okay.
called. And Bonham Electronics. So Bonham
Yeah.
is a company in the United Kingdom.
I see.
And yeah, so it was a training program. I guess it was to introduce some form of circuit making skill, control mechanism skill to
Mhm.
Nigeria. So yeah, so there were a couple of graduates and postgraduate engineers over there. I was like the only kid over
Yeah,
there. Yeah.
indeed. It reminds me of, like, in my high school days, I went to a it's called Siggraph.
Hmm,
So for Silicon Graphics, right?
okay.
And it's a big conference. I don't know if it's changed. I haven't been in a while. But I know that they only held them in three locations, and they would just alternate depending on the year. And either in California, Los Angeles, in Orlando, Florida, and or China,
Okay.
right? And so I had an opportunity in high school to go to one of these SIGGRAPH conferences. It just happened to be in Los Angeles that year. And so me and another student, and then of course we had a teacher who uh, you know made sure that we weren't acting a fool in
Yeah.
LA. So she monitored us. Miss Tennessee is her name. And uh, when I went into that SIGGRAPH conference and I seen, at least at the time, the latest in computers and how it was being done, or how they were being used to create video games and film and movies, in terms of the graphics, it was just amazing. So it's just like
Hmm.
the biggest convention center you can ever walk into, and from wall to wall it's just companies from around the world
Hmm.
showing off their products, right?
Yeah,
And
I
so they had
imagine.
students, of course, who would be settled. So it amazed me, one, that it wasn't too many of black folks there first and foremost.
Yeah.
Uh, but everyone else was represented large, and but it was just very inspiring. And like that, I was already doing some kind of early just from, and I'm dating myself in terms of like GeoCity websites and just learning some basic, just coding for the
Yeah.
web.
Yeah.
In But like when I saw that, I was like, there's a whole new level
Mm-hmm.
of things.
Mm-hmm.
And so it took me a while to switch, because when I graduated and then I first went in to do accounting, but uh I quickly was like, I don't like accounting, and
Yeah.
so went into computer science. And so, what's interesting, just a quick story, is that when so Miss Tennessee is old school, just an older black church woman,
Yeah.
who just didn't take no mess and all this other kind of stuff. But we stayed in the Beverly Center hotel. It was some hotel that's right across the street from the Beverly Center Mall, right? And so this is at the time when I don't think Arsenio Hall was still on, but it was either one of his shows, and I think Keenan Ivory Wayans
Mm.
had a show, a late night show, right? And and so, you know, me and the other guy who went with me, we had to share a room, and it was just one of the regular rooms on one of the regular floors. But Miss Tennessee had one of the suites, at the top floor.
Yeah.
And so she calls down to the room one day and was like, uh, my government name is Harold. She's like, Harold, can you come tell these guys to cut out all this noise and to quiet down and stuff like that? I'm like, Miss Tennessee, this is Los Angeles. You just don't.
Yeah.
I'm gonna need to assess the situation first before I just start going telling people to hush up. We not in the there's rules and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So me
Yeah.
and what's the name go upstairs, and we never got the opportunity because who she was talking about was the whole Wu-Tang clan.
Oh wow.
And
Like the
and
actual
the
Wu-Tang Clan?
actual
Oh
Wu-Tang, like,
wow.
yeah, like GZA, RZA, You God,
Oh
like all of
wow.
them, they were gonna be on the show, that one of those shows that I mentioned that night.
Yeah.
And so they were up in the hotel, so they were just all in the hallway. So we like, "Oh, snap. It's, Method Man, Wu-Tang, and all
Yeah.
this other kind of stuff." We'd have forgot all about Miss Tennessee.
Exactly.
But,
Yeah.
that was at that Siggraph conference. But anyway.
Oh
So,
gosh.
uh so now you get into college, so we're gonna skip, you're inspired, you come to the United States. And so what is your, like, just your first impressions? Where did you land first? Or did you
Mm.
just go directly to the campus
No,
in the school?
no, no. So I landed in Dallas. No, okay, so I took um what do they call them? Connecting flights.
Okay.
So I from Nigeria, I went to Turkey, spent a day in Istanbul.
Mm,
That was my first time really seeing a lot of white people.
okay.
In Nigeria, it's all black people. I
Yeah.
was that was a shock to me. Then I landed in London,
Okay.
spent a night there. Then from
So
London,
y'all,
Dallas, Texas.
not to cut you off, but so instead of just going like straight to London, which would be closer coming out of Nigeria, like over
Yeah,
the Sahara, y'all went backwards all the way to Turkey and
yeah,
then to London. Like,
yeah.
how does
So
that
it,
make
it
sense?
was it was cheaper. It was
Okay,
cheaper.
okay.
Yeah, it was cheaper, and I kind of wanted to see. That was my first
Yeah.
experience leaving the country. So I was
Okay.
like, yeah, it's cheaper. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. And
Okay.
my dad did it. So,
Okay.
yeah. So landed in Texas, and my first experience was not so good because I was waiting for my taxi, and a
Okay.
truck passed by and shouted, the N word. For real, that was
Yeah,
my first experience in America, landing
yeah,
in Dallas,
that's
Texas.
Texas. You landed in the right state to be called
Yeah,
the N word. You know.
yeah. And then the school organized like an apartment complex thingy, and
Mhm.
the name of the apartment complex for some reason is called Colonial Quarters. It's like what? But
Oh
yeah, yeah.
man,
So
if you ever visit Houston, in Houston they have, they still have cotton names, colonial names, plantation, this, that, like those are the names of like the suburb areas, you know.
true.
So I don't know the landscape of Dallas too much, even though my son lives in Dallas. Um, but like Houston, yeah, that's colonial everything, plantation, cotton picking, all
Yeah.
that. This name of neighborhood still to this day. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, so yeah, so landed there, they prepared the whole, living quarters for us. We didn't stay on campus because campus is too expensive, you
Mhm,
know. Yeah. So and yeah, so went to school, just like every other mechanical engineering student. How I got into what I got into was actually paying attention and chasing professors. So
mhm,
that is if you want to, so the thing is like the way the educational system is designed, it really is designed to um prepare people for the job market. It doesn't really, if you're not really focused, you're not really gonna learn. So like most times people just, sit in class, all they focus on is trying to pass an exam and just have a good
mhm,
grade and graduate and, get a good job. So the learning part, so in my field, mechanical engineering, most of your professors would probably be research scientists too.
mhm,
So whenever you go to any college and first year or whatever, go talk to these people, say,
mhm.
hey, that was a great class, you doing any research, are you doing any research, yeah, like, and even though they are doing, they will not want to involve you because you don't know anything, and they don't want to
Yeah.
have to explain everything to you, but you have to go to them and go to them, they'll be like, go see this other professor. And then when you go to another professor, say, go see this other professor. But when you now tell the other professor, hey, I went to this professor and he told me to come see you, the guy will be like, okay, fine, take this paper, read this, tell me what you think, and then that's how really I got into research. Was I chased a couple of professors all around because I know, like, when I look them up, I see what they're doing, and I want to go into all this. When you watch TV and you see all these scientists, they're calculating and they have all these computers, and
Mhm.
like Iron Man, he has like a machine that brings his armor and everything. I want to do that, So how do I get to that? I don't want to just waste my time and pass a class.
Yeah,
Like, I can cram the book and give you back what's in the book. It's not a problem.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, so just following them, and they began to take me seriously.
Mhm,
And then they started giving me projects, and meet this person. This place is offering an internship. This is this is that, and once you're in, you
mhm.
can't. Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
interesting as you say that. In a similar way, that's how I got into the scholarship aspect because at the University of Houston, I took all the Africana studies classes I could take. Matter of fact, I had to take two different sets because I made the mistake because I transferred from Southwest Texas State University to U of H,
Okay.
and I was still an accounting major then, and so then you had to take African studies courses as you didn't have to, you could choose between Asian studies, African studies, or Native American studies,
Okay.
right? And as part of that international business, kind of requirement. And so I chose African studies. However, in my mind, because by this time I'm an Afrocentrist, and I I'm equating, part of that is in terms of just your African American studies in African studies. And it was
Mm.
like, after I took my 12-hour minor in African American studies courses, there was like, no, these don't count. You have to take
Wow.
African studies in this group. So I
Wow.
was like, while it is technically a waste of money, is not a waste of money, but it's
Yeah.
still it's longer time, and is so I had to go take African studies courses.
Yeah.
But I've already took all that I could take, but I would still go to teachers' classes and sit in there and ask
Yeah.
questions and da da da.
Yeah.
So it got to the point where one professor, he passed away last year. His name is Dr. James Conyers, and he was the head of the African American Studies program there. And so, he's like, I was sitting in his office one day, uh, and we was having a conversation. And he was like, you have some good ideas, and they need to be a bit more refined, and you need to be in a circle with other scholars. So what I want you to do is to write a paper on, because we were talking about the word Kemet and its etymology and all this other kind of stuff. So this was
So that's
back
how that
in
started. Yeah.
2001. So this is how it all started, right?
Okay.
So he's like, you have saying some good ideas and some pertinent questions, but you need to be able to learn how to argue that more. So what I want you to do is write a paper, and then I want you to present it at this conference, which was an African American Studies Symposium. And
Okay.
so from there, I wrote the paper. I remember I'm still in undergrad, and it's nothing but PhDs
Yeah.
in Africology and all this other kind of stuff there. So I went there and did it, got feedback, met Dr. Mario Beatty, Milana Karenga, some other, scholars, and it's just kind of in the same vein. Like once, you know, started having conversations with these people who were doing the work, who were writing the books that we're reading and
Yeah.
and doing this research, I was hooked. And so, that's really kind of how I got in this lane, although my formal training is in the computer sciences. So, um, but with the Africana, saying studies minor. And so it goes to, the reason why I even tell that story to kind of reinforce your story is so that people who are watching understand that, you know, building relationships, showing interest
Mm.
in a topic, once a professor, sees that you ain't going nowhere and that you're going to keep coming back and asking these questions, they know that you're serious,
Yeah.
and all kinds of doors and things open up
Yeah.
for you when you have that kind of perseverance
True.
in the subject that you want. So don't be afraid to go to these professors and and do more and seek more than the average student who is just going to get their grades so they can move
Yeah.
on
Exactly.
and get a job. And so which kind of reminds me, and I'll start to ask you this now, because I just did a show not too long ago on the Dogon and how Marcel Griot was able to get certain information that others weren't able to get, from
Mm.
the Dogon, other anthropologists who came to study among them. And he did exactly what you just did. Is because he was consistent in wanting to know more,
Mm.
and
Okay.
he just wouldn't let up, after a while, even though they gave him basic information. He just wasn't satisfied with that. He wanted to know and
Yeah.
get deeper into. So, through a series of events, ultimately he, was initiated and got into, the deeper aspects of Dogon lore. So, with that being said, now I want to, because before we get more into the science aspect, the African studies interest of yours. And so we already established that born and raised in Nigeria, and you was born in the northern part. So, from my understanding, it is dominated by the culture of Islam primarily. Um, and so in the culture and religion of Islam, due to the Hausa and the Fulani, of course. So, well, first of all, I should ask, even though the name is the Yoruba, you said it was given to you that name, but if I'm not asking this in the wrong way, what ethnic group do you belong to? Is it Yoruba, or is it what is the
It
particular
is
group?
no, it's Yoruba.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
it's
okay, okay. No
yeah.
problem. All right. So, what got you interested, especially in a time where a lot of African people on the continent and in the diaspora is moving away from wanting to know more about themselves and their history, to you gravitating towards that type of information? What was that process? And has it always been that way, or is this a more relatively recent, phenomenon in terms of your life?
Hmm. I would say yes and no.
Okay.
So I would say okay. So from the story of college. So
Hmm.
after I got into the whole research thing, after like a year. So my second year, actually, beginning of my second year, um, Boko Haram in Nigeria.
Hmm.
They actually, like, that's when the phenomenon of Boko Haram actually, it became a problem where the government could not handle.
Hmm.
And my dad is a civil engineer. He works for, like I said, the National Board for Technical Education, but he also had his own engineering firm, and it
Hmm.
was called Falade Limited.
Hmm.
And most of it was because we're based in the north. Most of his enterprise was in the north. And
Hmm.
when the whole Boko Haram thing started, he basically lost everything.
Hmm.
Um, Most of his equipment were taken, offices were burnt. So yeah, it was basically I couldn't afford college anymore.
Okay.
So I had to leave. Um, so I would say from my second year till I even graduated, I only attended my fall semester because
Uh-huh.
so the way for my okay, so the way we do it in Africa is we
Uh-huh.
usually pay for our stuff with cash.
Okay.
So we usually don't take loans and stuff. So in that system, when what you have is taken away from you,
Yeah.
you have not you have to be innovative to start all over again.
Yeah.
So my dad had to really do a lot of hustling to be able to pay for my tuition. So we're
Mm.
basically playing catch up. So
Okay.
all those summer and spring semesters that I was not going to school, my blood was hot. Like I had this knowledge and this information. I was just doing research. I want to go back to it. I don't want it to stop. So I'm stuck at home. I started watching documentaries.
Mm.
So I watch document. No, so I make sure I always visit my mentor every week.
Mhm.
Say hi, we talk. So my mentor is basically the guy that coaches me and basically taught me everything I know on mathematical modeling. So in the African sense, that would be the Nganga. Yeah. So I make sure I go see him, but rest of my day I watch documentaries. I watch science documentaries because I also have a fear at the back of my head that I'll get sloppy in my math. So watching science, I made sure I watch at least one science documentary and one historical documentary
Mm.
every day. And in watching historical documentaries, I realized so I guess at that point in time, I was naive. I thought the world had accepted that, since all humans came from Africa, obviously Africa knew how to do math. Africans are not people that, jump. Do you know, funny enough? in school, people actually asked me how I got to America. That did I jump through trees? You know, people actually asked me that question. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, so in watching all this historical stuff, they don't even talk about Egypt. If they ever talk about Egypt, it's at a glance. They always
Yeah.
talk about Sumeria, the Fertile Crescent, and I'm like, what is this really history? And
Mhm.
I'm googling, and I'm like, I thought, you know, because
Mhm.
from the way where I'm brought up, I'm told my history somewhat, and from what I know, I had this idea that the Yoruba people and other Africans have contributed a lot. I
Yeah.
didn't know that it was a debate. I didn't know that it was a
Mhm.
thing. So in all those times that I was not in school, everything I saw online was not, there was no mention of Africa at all.
Mhm.
And that's when I started diving in more and started looking into Egypt and got lost in their architecture for a second. It's like, how did they build all of this? And then
Yeah.
from their architecture you get into their philosophy and all of that good stuff. And then in between not being in school and being in school, I just
Mm.
awoke basically.
Right.
Yeah, so that was my journey. I didn't know that there was a problem. Well, I knew that you know there was a race problem, but I thought that all this stuff was just racism. Everybody knew that Africans, as the first people, must have laid down the foundation for every other thing. you know I didn't know that we're still having a conversation about
Welcome to America.
that. Yeah.
As, as being on my channel, we're just in the middle of a conversation about the mere ability for African people to conceptualize uh deep scientific thoughts in terms of astrophysics and cosmology in ancient and present times. uh and we're sitting here battling with other black and
Black
African
people.
people
Yeah.
about it's like it's because they don't understand the culture and the languages and what this means, and African systems of pedagogy, or teaching systems indigenously and the like. And so yeah, I believe me, I understand well the what you just expressed. um Continue, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so yeah, that experience was very enlightening, and
Mhm.
that's when I also realized that I didn't know enough about myself.
Mhm.
And yeah, so I had to do a whole bunch of research on myself, even me, how I got my name,
Mhm.
what they mean, who's my dad and my grandfather and my great grandfather. And I had to go, my dad had to go pull up a whole family tree, my mom had to go pull up a whole family tree, and I had to
Mhm.
study what they are, what they did, what they wanted, what they were trying to achieve, and how that applies to myself. What
Mhm.
what am I doing here? And you know who is an African? All these questions. So because you have to engage with these people logically, and
Yeah.
you can't just be, you always, just like you say, demonstration always beats conversation. Yeah, so you have to demonstrate, so you have to actually just not just know that, hey, my name is Joseph Olaoluwa Falade. What does it mean? you know and why were you named that? You know, you need to ask yourself, you need to know yourself first. And when you know yourself, then you can now attempt to say, oh, I'm trying to know who the other Africans are. Who's the Igbo, who's the Hausa, the Fulani, the Mandingo, who are all these people in
Mhm.
relation to myself, and who are the ancient Egyptians. So all those research basically got me to that awakening of Afrocentricity
Mhm.
and the likes of that. Yeah.
Indeed, indeed. Um, so I want to go back now to uh I want to ask you about the two articles that we mentioned earlier. So since we just finished on the you know, what got you interested in Africana studies, uh the what is the nature of the article Oja Bogbo? Or is it
Okay.
Bogbogbo? And then it's
Ojak
three words.
Bokbokbo.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's central market. That's what it means.
Okay.
Yeah. So that it was basically so how I started um so I'm also a writer in my free time, you know.
Hmm.
And that was a poem. It was a
Okay.
whole that a poem that I submitted to a magazine. And it's written in Yoruba one side, and then there's a translation written in English one side.
Hmm.
And it was basically just telling the story of my life in America. And so, like, Central Market is like the world. So, like, the
Hmm.
market is like the world, and you going to your experience going through Central Market. And
Hmm.
writing it. I was in America, and I had not visited Nigeria in a while at that time.
Hmm.
And there's a famous in Kaduna where I grew up. There is a Central Market. Literally, that's what we call it. And that is so that would be like the Central Mall, but it's
Hmm.
usually like an open market, and it's
Yeah.
like tens of thousands of people. And it's basically a poetic symphony of my experience in America, just relating that to um, the market experience.
Mhm. All
Yeah.
right. It in for some added context. Uh, I forgot how you would actually say it in Yoruba, but I know as part of the lore in the Isheshe or Ifa tradition, we always say that heaven is our home and earth is the marketplace.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And that this coincides with a belief that some essence of you was pre-existing uh before you were born, physically here on earth. And so you came here with an assignment, you came here with business to do,
Mhm.
in the market.
Yeah.
And so we're reminded of that, all the time in the tradition. So it's interesting to hear from that context, but still, the market being the world and just
Yeah.
your experiences. Um, so I appreciate that. And so now for the more difficult subject, the parameter identification of ecological systems via discontinuous and single control regimes. What are we talking about here? There's a lot of them big college mathematical scientific words jumbled together. Um, so for the layperson, what we talking about in that text?
Okay, so and I would say this will be in relation to the conversation you're having about science, Big Bang, Africans, the
Mm-hmm.
Dogon, and all of that good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I know in science you hear a lot of big words.
Mm-hmm.
They are all just so scientists use mathematics as a language to describe phenomena. So
Mm-hmm.
reason why we don't use English is because the English language cannot describe it well enough. So the fact that you don't see math like one numbers in Africa, and actually they do exist, it's just the way they use them, or the way
Mm-hmm.
because they are in words.
Yeah.
Um, so like how for example, how you say bukanda, cook, or kikanda,
Mm-hmm.
the way they have that kanda as a root word, and they keep changing the prefixes. That's already like a set. That's like
Yeah.
that kind of marks the boundaries of a particular set.
Yeah.
So the way they speak their language is mathematics. So
Yeah.
what I do, and all those that long phrase you just read, is basically mathematical modeling. What mathematical modeling is you take a particular system, right? You try to describe that system as efficiently as you can. Um, and the reason again why you use math is using English doesn't describe it sufficiently enough. So that is all those parameters, all of that stuff. Parameters is just basically, so what I do is I'm a theoretical scientist and I investigate phenomenon. That's all I do. And
Mhm.
I focus on ecological systems. And I basically, what I'm looking for is to optimize an ecological system. In African terms, you always keep saying how the point is to add life to life. So an equation, you're trying to optimize a system. Once you get a result in that equation, you take your result and you put it into the real world to
Mhm.
add life to whatever system you're studying. So these people modeled, in fact, they are so ancient Africans. Again, I, so I don't want to generalize, but they are so good at modeling. In fact, they
Yep.
are way ahead of us when it comes to modeling.
Yep. Uh, it's it's funny because I don't know if I published it. I know I did. I had a brief discussion. I did publish it on YouTube. Um, but I think it was just part of a smaller discussion of how to understand deity as mathematical equations
Yes,
and
you
and
did publish that.
defining, yeah, and how the you if you understand what math really is, it's just what you said. So in linguistics we divide languages primarily in terms of what we call formal languages and natural languages. Natural languages being the languages that human beings have evolved, over time, since the time of Homo erectus, and the straightening up of our backs and walking. This helps to bring down certain um, organs and things of that nature, which helps us to speak. And so that's a natural language. It's not really conscious at this stage of human development. It's just something that you inherit as a result of being around other people who speak, and you have its underlying nuances. Then you have formal languages, and formal languages, of course, are still human originated languages, but vastly reduced, because the objective is to be as less ambiguous as possible.
Mm,
And so that's what math does. And math
yeah,
is just a formal language of logic to try to reason natural phenomena, or reason about reality, um, in the sense that in which you spoke. And um, so it's just like, so there's no confusion. So like in African American language, if I say it, a girl is bad, you can interpret that in many different ways. Like she could be bad for you,
oh, oh,
like
bad like
no,
good.
avoid her, or she's bad, she's beautiful,
Yeah,
is all get out, um and so to not have to interpret via context, we have, signs and symbols that relate to only one thing, in a very narrow and precise thing. And even when we're talking about proofs and things, like, they're very precise in the terms of the language, so that no matter where you are, if you understand the formal language, you understand what is being said, and you can't interpret it in a million different ways.
yeah.
And so I think that's what our guest is getting at in terms of the nature of mathematics and language. But so yeah, I do agree in that in terms of the parameters. It's really just learning the language
Exactly.
and but also also the systems of logic because lot I like how Dr. Chang, who's a theoretical mathematician, defines mathematics, and she says that you know mathematics is the study of things that obey the rules, excuse me, everything that obeys logic using the rules of logic.
Of logic, yeah.
Uh, Matter of fact, let me read it more precisely because I cited in Alluja. Uh, Let me go to, because I want to introduce these concepts. Let me see here. So yeah, let me see. Yeah, I say that linguistics is akin to mathematics and philosophy in that, like mathematics, it makes its arguments through formal logic. Mathematics is the study of anything that obeys the rules of logic using the rules of logic. And then, of course, we know that logic is also a study of consequence. So you have these axioms or whatnot, and what are the consequences of that? And we
Exactly.
determine what is true or not based upon if the conclusion can logically follow the uh, the predicates
Yeah.
and the axioms, saying beforehand. But you know, these are the kinds of things that we like to introduce and keep into the forefront of the minds of the people who watch this channel and engage with us. And so, what are some things that you are currently working on in this field? Excuse me.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, basically working on right now I'm working on multi-species logistic equations, basically studying several organisms in a system.
Okay.
So we can give, for example, if we want to, let's do a hard one. Let's do a hard one. A lake.
Hmm.
So let's take an example. In a village in Cameroon, okay. And I want to use the African example since we're on an African channel. Um, um, a fisherman has been trying to catch fish for a good month or two. He's been having a bad catch. He runs to the village priest to ask for help. What's going on? I can't, blah, blah, blah. The spirits or the gods are not happy.
Hmm.
What would the priest do? The first thing the priest has to do is, the problem that he's facing is he's trying to solve the problem of fishing. So there's a problem with the population.
Hmm.
So what he has to do is first of all quantify the population that we have in this particular lake. That's his first job. So now we're actually designing a mathematical model. So you want to quantify the population of a particular fish. So maybe the fish in their particular village they like to catch. I can't think of a fish now. Sod, maybe tilapia, something.
Hmm.
Yeah, so they like to catch tilapia. So the first thing he would do is quantify the population. How do you do that? First of all, you need to know the size of the lake. So first thing you need to do, you need to know the carrying capacity of this water body, what this water body can support. And then you need to know the intrinsic growth rate. So the rate of growth that happens in this lake. And if there's been a village that's been there for maybe hundreds of thousands of years, you should have a knowledge of, something. If you guys
Hmm.
fish over there. So the first thing you need to do to make a mathematical model is analytical research. So you need to gather information. So you need to determine the carrying capacity, you need to know the size of the lake, the depth of the lake. You
Hmm.
need to know the ecological, biological, and chemical state of the water. So pollution, um, You also need to know oxygen levels, phosphorus levels, nitrogen levels. So you
Mm.
need to gather data. You don't just magically come up with. So you need to observe. So all those Africans in the bush looking, or you wonder what they're doing, they are collecting analytical
Mm.
data. So once you have the information, you've quantified the population, the size of the lake. So for the engineer, so if we go to the future or to the modern world, what the engineer is trying to do is bridge the gap between um the equation
Mhm.
and what they see. So a mathematician is loves to imagine. He can imagine whatever and calculate whatever.
Mhm.
And but what you calculate, the problem with calculations or the problem with models is they capture the system in time, in a particular time. It's but the
Yeah.
system keeps happening.
Mhm.
So there is a big gap between what the biologists see in the forests or see in the wild and what the mathematician is calculating. The engineer's job is to take the data from the biologist, take the data from the mathematician, join it together, and put it into actual reality.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mm.
So in this, why I'm using this fish example is, in Texas we're having a drought, and
Mhm.
one of the research was trying to do was to determine the catfish population at the Wichita Lake, and it was successful. We were able to mathematically model, even though we didn't have good analytical data. We're able to successfully model, at least to some degree, at least I'll say to a 90 percentile degree of that population. So, and in this case, all the questions we asked ourselves was, we haven't gone to create any, like, because I listened to the talk you had with those pseudo killer people, and
Mhm.
they were talking about the what equipment did they use to get
Mhm.
to that point. But
Yeah.
at this point in time, you and I have had this conversation about carrying capacities. We haven't
Mhm.
left the computer screen, you
Yeah.
know and all you have to do is give all these things value. So you can just in theoretical science, they give carrying capacity K. You can call
Yeah.
it B, you can call it V, you can call it anything.
You could
you
call
know
it, you could just whatever that symbol is, it stands
exactly.
for anything, and that
Exactly.
it's funny because, as I said, if you understand what a deity is, like if you look at my aunt, although it's a graphic of a woman with wings, she represents a system. If you know what the system is, or what are the variables in the system, you can
Exactly.
understand the scientific aspect of what my aunt
Yes.
is, you know,
Yes. And that's
or any other
basically
deity.
that title, that parameter
Yeah,
identification is basically knowing how to know the parameter, to pick up parameters for a mathematical. That's
mhm,
basically what you read.
yeah,
How to pick up the parameters to choose in that equation when
yeah,
you are trying to mathematically model a system. And so that discontinuous and singular control regimes is just the technique you use. But
yeah,
that's all that's about. And if you
yeah.
read that, you should know it. Basically, the aim of that research is to teach the biologists, because I guess we'll get in later into this conversation, but biologists have been doing a completely wrong thing for years. And that is the reason why you need research, because research improves the method, because there
Yeah,
was already a method before. But the
exactly.
more you research that particular thing, you know the problems of what you had before, and then you improve it. So yeah, so the biologists have been using, and if you Google peer reviewed works on population dynamics, again, we'll get to that in our
Mhm.
conversation, but you they have been using a model that doesn't accurately describe an ecological system. And so that
Mm.
has been my contribution to that field, to provide an accurate mathematical model to describe a multi-species uh, system or functional response. Yeah.
It's funny you say that because I mentioned well, I don't know if I mentioned I may be kind of merging two conversations, but I was having a conversation with Dr. Schumacher Keita last night, and who's a biological anthropologist, and who's also going to be speaking at that conference connecting Egypt to West Africa. And you know, him and I debate all the time about, again, there was this conversation. So Greenberg's model in terms of in his categorizations of Afroasiatic, Niger Congo, Khoisan, and Nilo-Saharan. And so, what as I mentioned earlier, we always get into these these small scale debates. Keep in mind that he's a biological anthropologist and he knows about genetics and all that other kind of stuff. But I have to continue to school him on the linguistics front. So he schools me on
Yeah.
clones and DNA and all that.
Yeah.
I'm a student, but then I have to inform him of certain arguments in things. And so, like, he he doesn't understand, he doesn't fully grasp why I'm so strong in certain of my arguments, regarding certain linguistic things. And it is a result of just as what you said. It's like over time, after I've been doing the work and doing the experimentation, I see, I understand the methods that came before that you learn in the intro classes.
Mm-hmm.
But once you get involved in the actual work, you see the limitations and how certain things
Yes.
can be strengthened. And
Yes.
and with my computer science background, I require a little bit more rigor when coming to conclusions about things because of the
Yes.
mathematics background. So when I'm seeing all this, what I consider sloppiness in terms of interpretation, in terms of methodology, you know, uh, we, I create more stringent methods to make more precise arguments, in the linguistic realm. And so I combine this, of course, with logic. So I'm familiar with proofs and proof by contradiction and all this. I make sure that I have all that in my equations and in my set theories uh concerning these comparative sets that I be doing. And so part of the struggle is, in leaving that conversation just in the broader and going into conversations like with the pseudo killers, is that there are folks who don't believe that African people can spot inconsistencies and flaws in methodology, and that they have agency and the intelligence enough to create more stringent methods and rigor or whatnot, and be able to apply that and into the fields and things. So it's like with Jean Claude Mboli, for example. Like when I would have these arguments with folks about his work. Now, keep in mind, he's also a scientist. He's an electrical engineer, and who studied, took 10 years to study and master linguistics. And so he, again, he's coming from a scientific background where it requires more rigor.
Yeah.
And when he started the approach to the classification of African languages, he's like, the current methods is too sloppy. Like, all this can be accounted for in terms of chance coincidence. And the only way that we're able to do this is if we, combine the standard comparative method, and then add these parameters as well in terms of what he calls this, the semantics in things. And so when understanding these rigors and only dealing with certain languages, not going 50 languages, at random, to try to make these connections. You stick to the same group of languages, and
Yes.
then when you compare them all together using the comparative method and keeping semantics and stuff in mind, then you have a more complete picture, of reality, and then you can make certain other predictions that future experimentation, if you can do that in linguistics, will bear out. But it's the struggle with, you know it, people will only respect stuff if white people create it to do it, or verify it, not understanding it's our rigor, that African rigor, that caused all these changes in many of these other fields. So when you talk about like multidisciplinary approaches to research, who was doing that first? Sheikh Anta Joe. Now it's the standard to have multi uh, 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 these interconnections of different fields to answer pertinent questions in history or
Yeah.
sociology and stuff like this. But it started with the Africans. Now
True.
it's standard, and they make it seem as if like
Like
they just
they've been thinking
naturally,
about it. Yeah.
yeah, like there's no, you were forced to do that because of African scholars such as Sheikh Anta Diop, Dr. Theophilo Benga, and others. And it's the same thing with like Malefe Kitty Asante with the whole Afrocentricity. Like when Afrocentricity came, now everybody is again multidisciplinary, and they're considering, centers, and the people under study having the agency and the priority in terms of interpreting their reality. Like it's becoming common now, but it wasn't common then. But it was because of these African scholars who did exactly what you just said, in terms of seeing the flaws of the past, or the limitations of the methods, and then coming up with uh new systems of understanding, and with a bit more rigor and more care, and sensitive to the aspects of reality that would get us to a more accurate understanding of history, and to design future systems that, you know would be beneficial, to everyone involved.
Yeah.
And so I think you make a very good point there. And I just didn't want that to just sink into the ether, of this program. Um, but what are your plans? Like, where do you ultimately want to go? Are you still trying to get into space? Do you want to create, the Africa Space ASA, the African Space Association? I've been trying to think of a metaphor for Ashe. Like I want Ashe to like to be the space. Something I'm gonna figure out something. Something's gonna be
Okay.
Ashe,
Yeah.
like for some African science, or but it's the sh part. But I'm gonna make up something. I'm gonna find something. But what is your, if there is just an ultimate goal, like what would you see yourself doing? Where do you want to go uh with the information uh that you have learned and are learning? Like, what do you ultimately want to do?
Okay, so for me, I would say two things at the moment. The
Hmm.
first is more future based. It's been completed, but it's not ready for the world yet. And
Mm,
that would be mathematically modeling the most efficient government system.
mm.
And seeing as Africa has a serious governance problem, Nigeria, it's the government is it's non-existent. Um, Democracy is not something that can work in Africa because of the several tribes. Everybody will always, if the candidate is if there are two candidates. One is a Yoruba, one is a Igbo, or the
mm,
Igbo will vote for the Igbo, or the Yoruba will vote for the Yoruba.
yeah,
So we need a system that works. So I'm looking at modeling the most efficient government based on a cell. I want it to be a self-generating, self-repairing entity that, even if there's a coup, even if there is
mhm,
a genocide, the government will work and
yeah,
its systems will work. But that's a future, whatever. Why I'm not making it public, because the it's a little bit touchy because
mhm.
it's politics, yeah. But my dream of going to space is still alive, and yeah. So um, I'm actually creating a company called Pack Dynamics.
Uh-huh,
Um, we're still at the beginning stage. Basically, I'm trying to amass my means of production. So
mhm,
I'm getting 3D printers, I'm getting drawing machines, softwares. I have a whole storage field in Texas. I have another storage in Philly.
mhm,
So if I'm coming out talking about I'm taking Africans to space, I have to give something. And
mhm,
the problem that I face is it's a $1 billion industry.
yeah,
Elon Musk gets about $40 billion from the government every year. So
yeah,
why this is essential is space is the birthright of Africans.
yeah,
Our When we talk about the astral plane, the land of the ancestors,
mhm,
that is space. And we are letting Trump talk about Space Force trying to turn that place into a battlefield. They litter that place. Like they have no regard for space. And Elon Musk is talking about going to Mars. That is the most. Any real serious scientist knows that we need a space infrastructure first before you take anybody to Mars. Why? We have people dying in the desert. We have people dying in the city. How do you maintain a human population so far away with no space infrastructure? So I believe that all the whole idea of taking people to Mars, he's using that to get like investors for what he's trying to do.
mhm,
But we need a space infrastructure. We need something on the moon. But for Africans, and
mhm,
we shouldn't be focused on things like, hey, we're going to Mars, we have real world problems. So we have energy problems, for example.
mhm,
And the earth is going through a turbulent time right now. And
yeah,
the only way we can contribute is to deal with our energy consumption. How do we solve our energy consumption? How about you put a big, big ass solar panel in space instead of putting it on Earth? Because on Earth, atmospheric coverings and all of that
mhm,
good stuff prevents, and then we have day and night circle. It prevents an efficient energy regime. So
yeah,
we need a space infrastructure up there that beams energy. So it takes energy directly from the sun and it
yeah.
beams the energy to a power station on Earth. If Africa can do this before any of them do, we will be rich forever. You know, because energy is what everybody needs.
Yeah,
So we need to create an ancestral view of what intend to do in the next 10,000 to 20,000 years. We need
mhm,
to design, right, is a civilization that is looking towards space. And there are several things I'm looking into. And when the company does come out live, it would be it would have to depend on the interest of African Americans, because this is
yeah.
for them and it's not for profit. I'm not trying to go to space and take pictures like Elon Musk and all of that good stuff. No, 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 no. We're trying to do real science here. And the only thing there are several benefits. One of the things that will save Earth is we need to diversify into space, and not by building stupid things in space. No, we
Mhm,
need a serious ancestral view that looks into a good 20,000 years from now. So that's what I'm trying to do with my company called Pack Dynamics. I'm trying to, so all the black engineers, scientists I know, so the problem is most of them are not trained in that Afrocentric view, and they don't look at the world in that way. But what I'm trying to do is, talk to them, trying to bring partnership. I also want to create, before we can get there, I want to create a African centered peer reviewed system where you can
Mm,
write something on Egypt, on ancient Egypt, without being scared. Because if you write that on, you know, they are not ready for our conversations.
yeah.
So we need actual scientists that will peer review our work so that we can stop waiting for them to approve it. You know,
Yeah.
so
That's
yeah.
that's something that Shamaka Keita and I were talking about last night as well. And it's primarily because we have a few, but it's only a few, like literally maybe two. And that is the Ankh review by that was created by Cheikh Anta Diop's son. But it has been mainly promoted in things by Dr. Theophilo Benga. But then you have the I Medjat and Caribbean Kahir journal out of the Caribbean. However, the main person who was holding that down was Dr. Alan Anselin, and he passed away a few years ago. Um, Probably even less than that, maybe a year. It's within the last 2 years. Is either last year, the beginning, or the year before that. But within the last 2 years, he passed away, and so they're kind of scrambling, trying to reorganize the journal.
Hmm,
Because he mainly, he set up the initial relationship, so he didn't really build a system
hmm,
that would live on past him, that
yeah,
he can just be replaced, and
yeah.
then it's business as usual. And that's something that I believe that a scientific education would help us to better understand, and that is the nature of systems, and how that works, and how to build a system, and how to make a system thrive. And of course, a system can only thrive if it continually has inputs into the system, energy pumped into the system. um and so of course that would be in the form of funds, in a state like this. But that's what you just talk about, is something that I've been thinking of. And so even along the lines of the, we're going to do a journal for the Martin Delaney Center for Egyptology. Like, it will
Okay.
have its own journal. But the concerns which you just stated is one of the reasons why, because uh, too many times stuff is getting rejected. Like, I even submitted something relatively recent, it's like a year ago, and I haven't heard back
Hmm,
from them. And I emailed them, fairly recently, just to get an update. But I chalked it to the pandemic and all that stuff, and at the time when I sent it. But Dr. Keita was like, they didn't respond at all.
yeah, that's
And
odd.
he said, that's odd,
Yeah.
you know, because he was like, he said that you said something, you started something. See, they whatever you sent, they couldn't dismiss it offhand, because what normally would happen is they would send you a letter saying, uh, we get so many, entries per year, but we can only publish so much. We had, da da da, that
Yeah,
kind of stuff.
yeah, I know
Or
what you.
they'll just, just outright say that your your paper just doesn't meet a certain standard, or your argument isn't da 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 da. But he's like, the fact that they're sitting on it is because they're struggling with how
So
to approach with your
respond,
results.
yeah.
So they know that you've done your homework, and they can't summarily just dismiss it. And so he gave me some advice on probably how to approach it, in and just how to kind of shrink it, and just deal with the exploratory part of it, just on the scientific part, without without including the implications, because that's what I've done. Included the implications for what my
No, yeah, no, yeah, yeah, yeah.
results. So if 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 they approve this, then it implies something that goes
Implies,
against um much of what they've been arguing, saying over the years, and they have no way, because you know uh I'm very meticulous in terms of the type of argumentation that I made.
yeah,
So, but I of course I can create my own journal, but then like what fun is that? If I could
exactly,
just, even if I
exactly.
find some, so I can publish, but I could and have some people, but that's part of the process. And one of the things that he was talking about is the one of the difficulties is finding the people who is willing to be a senior editor of the journal, and people to do the necessary peer review for us. So that's kind of what they're going through now, in regards to that particular journal. But yeah, I understand completely. I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
think I cut you off, but go ahead.
Can't remember where I was at, but yeah, just to, like, first of all, what I'm trying to do is gather all the, if you're a scientist, send me your research. So what I'm
Mhm,
trying to do right now is gather gather enough black research, especially focused, well, in relation to pack dynamics, really
mhm,
focused on things that will take us to space. So
mhm,
one of the first products that I intend to release is wearable technology. And I will not
mhm,
share a lot about that again because
mhm.
General Electric can just hear that and yeah, they're rich, they can do it,
Yeah,
But it's
just
based,
one of their interns. Hey, go.
yeah.
Here's 3 billion. Go do. Go do
Exactly.
that thing that we heard on that channel. We can't pronounce
Yeah.
their names. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but basically we're looking at wearable technology right now, and
Mhm,
basically to assist in introducing science and, I guess, Afrofuturism to
mm,
every black folk. So we're trying to make the things they use every day into an African things in, and if you kind of can figure out what that means, you will know what I'm talking about. But
uh,
we intend to put technology in wearable technology, basically, and
mm,
that way introduce them into a range of things. And really, that is just to garner funds for taking us into space. And we're
mm,
going to make exosuits. We're going
mm,
to make, like, there are several projects. There's like a whole ancestral view.
mm,
But yeah, yeah, and I intend to also work with like educational institutions. I'm already working with one from Nigeria, and we're trying to have them design a web system that any school, any black school, you don't even have to have the money to buy the equipment. You can just log in and operate a population dynamics lab. So whatever
mm,
research you're doing, just log in. Your school probably has an agreement with us, and what are you trying to do? You will have a whole lab, cameras looking at um, whatever predator you want, a wolf spider, a cricket, a shark, and then
yeah,
you can take analytical data, and then the teachers over there will teach them how to
yeah,
mathematically model, and from
mm,
there they know it, and you can just apply that to your life. And yeah, so that's what we're working on. That's what we're working on.
indeed. I want to kind of sidestep before we go
Okay.
within these next 15 minutes. But given that you're from Nigeria, and I want to ask you about if you are familiar with Gabriel Oyibo, um, who is a mathematician and physicist. And if so, I wanted to see if you had an opportunity to kind of read or brush up on his work, and what was your opinion. But I guess that just depends on The
If I've
first
heard of
person, go ahead, you know.
him. I actually heard of him recently,
Mhm.
and I have not read any of his works. I've never looked him up, but I heard that his books are expensive.
As hell.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
but I don't know too much about what he's done. No, I'm sorry.
okay. Yeah, so he, alleges that he has, kinda solved the problem or the research question regarding the ability to unify the known forces, of nature. So, you had a strong, weak nuclear forces, gravity, and the electromagnetic force, right?
Hmm,
And so that seems to be the kind of like the holy grail of physics right now. If you have that ability to, combine those two. So the other ones is explainable using, the standard model and even quantum mechanics. But it's the gravity piece that is uh, really an issue here, and especially since Einstein's new way of looking at gravity, because people thought that gravity was like just some entity that pulls or pushes something, like in terms of that wave of force, but they understand it more so now as the byproduct of motion and weight of a given object or entity, right, that pulls or shapes space-time.
mm,
So then it becomes okay, once you start getting on the quantum level, what really then is gravity, at such a small scale that, because the earth, for example, has a gravitational pull because of the size and weight on it sitting in space-time, that when objects come into its orbit, it falls towards it. But and then, of course, the sun being much more massive, and sitting in the center, so everything is in motion and orbits around it. It has its own effect, and so orbit and even the moon, everything is how satellites work. Everything is falling towards the Earth, and because of the speed and momentum, that it just kind of circulates and orbits. Anyway, so his works have been geared towards that. Now, if you was just to listen to him speak, or you'll think, okay, this he's not all the way there. At least that's my opinion. I ain't gonna put that on you. That's my opinion. Like, what's bruh, come on. But when you actually read the work, it's rigorous. It's
hmm.
scientific. It's not what he be talking about on it. Like, so you have to kind of separate, the two. It's almost like, and this is a bad analogy, but like R. Kelly, he's the music is just great, but him in real life as a
Oh
person is
God.
like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Um, so I've always wanted to see if, and I haven't gotten a big book. He has a highlights. He calls it the uh, Grand Unified, or Gaga, God Almighty Grand Unified Theory,
Mm,
right? And so he has a highlights book. I have the highlights book, and then he has the bigger, thicker book, and that's the one that everybody be like is mad expensive, because I think it's out of print, and once some go out of print and people on Amazon find out you want it, they be like $3,000.
yeah.
For the like, come on, son, you're paying $3,000. Um,
Wow, I
so
haven't heard of him though, but I guess I gotta check that out.
yeah, man. I would love to hear your thoughts, initial thoughts,
Okay.
about that work from the scientific perspective. But so since that question can't be answered, my question then is, who are some African scientists that inspire you? Like, who do you look to and be like, they're doing, you know, uh, innovative and great work, or have done, if they've passed. Um, who sh- who do you know that inspires you that we should know about?
Oh. Shit, that's a very difficult question.
Mhm,
Yeah, that's a very difficult question because I don't, because again, I'm a Nigerian, and in
mhm,
Nigeria, there are not enough equipments for scientists to
mm,
do enough to even be known. And
right,
in America, my historical knowledge of the contribution of African Americans in science is very limited, unfortunately.
mm,
Yeah,
mm,
so I know of everyone knows the Grassy, but I don't really look up to him.
mhm,
Um, so unfortunately, this person is not African, but there is a South Korean lady,
mm,
and this might also be relevant for the whole Big Bang question again because her name is called Miranda Cheng,
mhm,
and she basically created a whole equation called umbral moonshine theory,
mhm,
and basically that links symmetries. So a symmetry is just anything that goes through any transformation and is still the same. And so things like a painting of fractals, which we have a lot in Africa, for example. And she created a way to calculate symmetries by joining symmetries and functions, and that is a big deal. So basically, she can look at a painting and do the math of what's happening in that painting.
mhm, mhm.
Yes,
Oh,
like if you Google Umbra moonshine theory, you will. I promise you, if anyone understands what they're talking about, I will give you $100. It's so complicated that yeah, so I really look up to that woman. She's a rock star. She plays music,
mm,
she's not really, but I really look up to her. But for Africans, unfortunately, I just reference the old stuff. I don't really have anyone I look up to.
mm.
So if you have any suggestions to educate me, I'm definitely open.
Well, I'm surprised you haven't mentioned Dr. Philip Emeagwali.
That name
You,
is familiar.
yeah,
Emeagwali.
he's a
Oh,
math.
the Nigerian guy that did the computer thing, Igbo guy.
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
Yes, I know him. I know him.
yes.
I know him. I know him.
He's a computer scientist, mathematician, and engineer. And of course, Gabriel Oyibo is in that rank.
In that rank, yeah.
Um, who else can I think of? It's only a few. Like some, I mean, I just know people personally, like who were like in chemistry, like even though he's gone, the late Dr. Opega, um,
That name is also familiar.
he but most folks would know him from, the Ifa tradition, and the one who I'm talking about, out of Ode Remu um, state, and uh, is Afalabi Opega, and you know he's his lineage is how I got initiated into Ifa,
Mm,
but he's a PhD in chemistry. There's many, and so what I'm saying that to say that you will probably find more because of the oil industry, a lot of doctors and that are associated with that. But yeah, that's a I'm trying to think of some others coming out of Nigeria. Besides BC, Ezerioa, if I'm even is it Ezerioha? Ezerioa, I forgot.
I
Um,
gotta see it.
yeah, who else? Um, yeah, I have to look, but that's something that we need to add is these scientists. And
No,
so even
yes,
on
you're
that,
very right. You're very right.
even amongst the African American, like I always big up Dr. Sylvester James, or is it Sylvester James Turner, um, who is out of, I want to say is he originally out of Detroit? I know he went to MIT, to get his PhD, but he's the first person to get a PhD in supersymmetry. Like he wrote the first dissertation on supersymmetry.
Mm,
And so, he had, him and his team have, if you search his name, the Adinkras will come up. And these are mathematical equations and these models, which he calls Adinkras, to that reason about these natural error correcting codes, in nature, right? And he talks about this kind of binary system that we could model. And it just reminds me of the Ifa Odu system, um in the priesthood. And so I'll be talking about, I talked a little bit about it in the last conversation dealing with the Dogon, but I want to have its own, show, to re-emphasize that it from bit, and how, a lot of scientific ideas, scientifically testable ideas, already exist in much of African culture. It's just that you have to know the culture and know the languages to understand it and to be able to articulate it in very clear and scientific terms.
yeah.
And so, that, I guess that's a project for us to make more known,
Yes,
these
yes.
African scientists. So I know they
No,
exist there. Nigeria is a big place,
no, it is a big
and
place.
so
It is a
we
big
going
place.
we going I'm gonna find. Matter of fact, I just had another computer scientist in on the program more recently, before I interviewed. No, it was after. It's because of him that I was able to introduce. Matter of fact, I need to put him on the Black Science Month.
Hmm.
Uh, that interview on the Black Science Month channel.
Okay.
Um, but I want to highlight more so people see, like, this is what we do. This is
Black people do
this is
science.
black people do science. It's like, it's just no way other around it. But
Yeah,
I think, to that question that you, or that statement that you made, about the equipment and stuff. Like, I was just looking at a video on how to create a battery, like, for off grid, that you can power via a solar. Like, you
yeah.
just get you like a kind of a, what is it, a bucket crate or whatnot, and but you buy the parts
Mhm,
and you put it in, and all the batteries line up. Your own
mhm.
Elon Musk. Like, if more people understood how to do that, you know, we can imagine and dream and put together those kinds of labs, because we understand the electrical engineering
Yeah,
aspect that would
yeah.
make that happen. Of course, that you need funds and stuff, but
Yeah, that's the
it,
big problem.
it
It's, I'm doing all of this from my paycheck,
yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
Alrighty. Well, don't want to take up too much of your time. We're going on 2 hours here. And so, um, I want to share with the public, if y'all want to, know more, or even invest in any of Brother Falade's future endeavors in the sciences, and just want to know more. And, if you have young children and you think that they may benefit from conversations uh, like this, uh, maybe you can reach out to our guest and, continue these conversations. So, you can reach him at the info at, what is it, packdynamics.co, and packsdynamics.co as the website. So I'll make sure that I put that in the description so that you wouldn't have to try to figure out and scroll if you come back to the video and to contact our good brother. And so, I just want to say that I appreciate, again, you taking the time to have a conversation about us and a conversation with us, the Mbongi family. And would love to have you back on, again, and maybe we can talk more about some cultural stuff that some commonalities or some insights, growing up in Nigeria that you may be able to inform us of uh, in that context. So, I give you the last word. You got anything that you want to say or comment on before we go?
I want to thank you, brother sir, for welcoming me over here. It's a pleasure. It's a privilege, and I'm glad I could share whatever with the whole family. And just want to say, African Americans out there, you all have inherited a whole continent, a whole country, and the whole of space. So take advantage of it. Find a community in Africa. Become a eminent and powerful person. Be a true Ba Nkoli, you know, and prepare a great future for the rest of the whole black world. That's all I can say. Thank you very much, Mr. Asar.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. And again, thank you all for listening. We have more in store, for you in the near future. So make sure that you like the video, that you share this amongst your friends and colleagues, and that you leave a comment. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section, and or you can email them directly at the address that we mentioned earlier. So with that said, I'm going to leave with this commercial. So y'all be blessed, stay safe, continue to wear your mask, and continue with on with Black excellence. So we appreciate you all. See you soon.
You see, I have a lot of things that's on my mind, and I would like to let them out. Look, I see reality breaking down all my fantasies. It would be nice if I at least had one fantasy. That neutrality about to take a terabyte from the American apple pie, better get a slice. It's kinda scary the way that this life is moving on. Marvin's doing backflips inside his grave, what's going on? We have head-on collisions, not seeing another's vision. Maybe that's the reason why some colors fit the description. Lot of relationships need life rafts, sinking ships. I guess you just can't have only one like potato chips. I would love for you to listen with an open heart, but would you really even hear me if it's torn apart? I don't do the things that I used to. I'll be fine even if I lose you, okay? Okay.
Peace and blessings, family. My name is asarimhotep, and I am with the Martin Delaney Center for Egyptology, as well as the popular YouTube channel Mbongi. I am an Africologist and computer scientist out of Houston, Texas, and Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And I have spent the last 20 years researching the connections between ancient Kemet, that is modern Egypt, and modern Bantu-speaking cultures of Central and Southern Africa. Throughout this 20-year journey, I've examined all the relevant literature in numerous languages, collected paleontological as well as archaeological data from across millennia. I have presented hypotheses and abandoned hypotheses, come to conclusions and abandoned conclusions, reviewed arguments for and against known hypotheses, and analyzed frameworks that sought to define and characterize the vast array of African experiences. After over 20 years of asking critical questions of history, of philosophy, religion, and culture, I have finally gotten to the point where I have complete and total faith in the results of our research. I say our research because I am one of among a number of scholars who have either laid the foundations in classical Africology or are continuing to expand and develop more robust research on this connection between ancient Egyptian and Bantu civilizations. After spending so much time behind the computer and in the libraries and in the museums for over 20 years, I believe it is time to go out and to touch the living artifacts and engage with the people involved in the research whose stories we have been telling all this time, which brings us to why we are here today. Although I have written and will continue to write about the results of my research, my goal now is to summarize this data and present it in documentary film form. I have decided to put some of that computer science as well as new media experience together to creatively tell this important aspect of African history that many may not be aware of. The title of the film is Chiena Intu, Ancient Kemet and the Intu Universe, and we are currently raising funds for the first phase of our journey. In February of 2022, I will be joining the crew of the award-winning documentary film Happy, The Role of Economics on the Development of Civilization, for a very important Returning to the Source tour and conference in Egypt, which we know is in Northeast Africa. And while I am there, I will be shooting parts of our film Chiena Intu and gathering footage for a proof of concept trailer, which will be used for greater fundraising efforts in the near future. And this is where you come in. I am currently trying to raise $5,000 to help with location expenses, equipment rentals, insurance, and the like, so that we can get some great shots for some primary as well as B-roll footage. When we return from Egypt, some of this footage will be combined with some preliminary interviews to compile a unique trailer to give the audience and potential investors a glimpse of the vision and potential of the film. Our ultimate goal is to travel to places like the Democratic Republic of Congo, Zimbabwe, Uganda, and South Africa for the first film. And did I forget to mention that we intend for this to be a series of documentary films? Therefore, subsequent films will require us to travel to places like Cameroon, Nigeria, Ghana, and Senegal, as well as Ethiopia, Kenya, and Somalia. We have big goals, and with your help, we can make this happen. And if you're interested in donating to this film project, please visit our website at www.chienaintufilm.com, where you can leave a donation. There are other ways you can donate as well, which includes joining our Patreon page, donating through CashApp, or donating live when we're doing a live show on YouTube. And the YouTube channel has over 6,000 subscribers, and Facebook has over 5,000 subscribers as well. And with a minimum donation of like $5 each, we can quickly reach our goal. You can spread the word of our efforts by sharing this video with friends and colleagues, as well as liking it. We appreciate your help, and all donors will be given credit on the website, as well as at the end of the film during the credits. We thank you from the bottom of our heart to those who have given generously already, and we look forward to bringing this important film to the public. Hotep.